You're listening to episode 50 of the Business Building Rockstar Show.
You're listening to the Business Building Rockstar Show, where your host, Nicole Holland, gets the lowdown from today's most talented, inspiring, and successful entrepreneurs on what it really takes to reach rockstar status.
Do you want to get your message out in a bigger way by being a guest on a web show or podcast just like this? If you do, text the letters I am ready to 33444, and I will send you free of charge a guide called How to Be a Great Guest. Don't make rookie mistakes that so many people do when they're starting out. Get known as a great guest that hosts search for free by texting I am ready to 33444. So to spell that out, it's the letters I am READY to 33444, and I will send you a complimentary copy of my guide, How to Be a Great Guest. Whoa, episode 50. What a momentous occasion, and I couldn't be happier to be sharing this with Ralph Brogden. On this episode, Ralph and I talk about how to craft masterfully the life that you really want to live. He shares with me how to build a personal brand using the 4V approach, and we talk about what to do when you're in the midst of turmoil. Ralph's got some great stuff to say, so without further delay, let's get to the interview. Hello and welcome. Ralph Brogden today is my guest. I'm so excited. He is a best-selling author, freelance journalist, and media strategist with a professional and educational background in marketing, psychology, and publishing. His work has been featured on CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, USA Today, and hundreds of other nationally syndicated television, newspaper, and magazine outlets. He is a contributor and host on several online business media outlets, including Business Innovators Magazine, Rebelpreneur Radio, and Wake Up Motivated. Ralph creates marketing, media, and publishing strategies for business owners who want to quickly become a thought leader that everyone knows, likes, and trusts. Ralph, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for being with me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Nicole. I've been looking forward to it, and it's good to connect with you.
Always good to connect. Yes, I had so much fun with you on your show not too long ago, and it's absolutely a pleasure to have you here. So to start out, how about you fill in the blanks? That was a beautiful bio, but let's talk to the listeners a little bit more about what you're doing today and how you serve and support your people.
Well, I look for ways to promote small business owners, solopreneurs, or rebelpreneurs, as I like to say. I use a combination of media strategy, marketing strategy. I work with people. I would say probably, I call it the 4V approach: visual, voice, vibe, and value. So I help people build personal brands based around visual. Does it look good? Voice. Does it sound good? Vibe. Does it feel good? And value. Is it worth the time and energy for other people to invest in whatever it is that you're putting out there? So I look at things and I try to show my clients how to better position themselves with PR, publicity, media, and try to help them get more clients, get more business.
Fabulous. I love that, the 4Vs. And I so appreciate that because, as you know, I've got a lot of visual stuff going on.
Yeah.
Obviously, the podcast is the voice, and well, part of it, that's the auditory voice. But
you've got a really strong personal brand. That's one of the things that attracted me to you, Nicole, is that you've got the visual, the voice, the vibe, and the value. You've got all. You've touched all four bases. You're a home run.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Very cool. So let's talk about you and your journey. How did you wind up doing this?
That's a good question. Well, I think that I've always been kind of a free spirit, kind of independent, and always been really interested in making money, of course, and also being my own boss. So I got started really young. When I was 18 years old, I started a real estate publishing business. So basically, I would go around and sell advertising to local business owners, and I would publish real estate relocation magazines. So I got hooked on marketing because the very first prospect that I called on bought my ad for $800. And $800, I mean, this was like 25 years ago. $800 was the most money I had ever held in my hand at one time. And I thought, I am going to be rich. I am going to be a millionaire. And so I went back home. I quit my job, gave my notice, and I went into my own business full time. Well, the second prospect that I talked to was a mechanic in a garage. And I knew nothing about sales. And now looking back on it, I think that first sale was just luck or coincidence or a happy accident. I don't know what it was. But the second person I talked to, I gave him the weakest, crappiest sales pitch you could ever imagine. I said, he's under the car. He's covered with grease. He's irritated that I'm interrupting him. I'm there in my shirt and my tie, and he comes out from underneath the car and he's like, what's going on? And I tried to shake his hand because I'd read somewhere that if you shake hands with prospects, it would make a deep connection with them. So I tried to shake his hand. His hands were covered with grease. Everything I did was just the wrong thing to do. So he wanted to know what I wanted. I said, and I gave him the weakest pitch ever. I said, I just came by today to see if you might be interested in doing a little bit of advertising. And of course, what did he say? Not interested. So did I realize I might not make $1 million in the advertising business, but that got me really to think about what is the difference between this first person that bought what I had to sell and the second guy who wasn't interested. Was it them or was it me? And I realized that if I change my approach, if I change the messaging, if I change different aspects of my offer and my price, that basically I could get more people to say yes than say no. So that started kind of a lifelong interest in marketing, in psychology. I had some business adventures that didn't work out. I worked for a web design and media agency in New York and did some copywriting and marketing strategy for them for a couple of years. And so now here I am doing my own thing and loving it. But I like to say I'm an overnight success, and it only took me 25 years to get here.
I love it. Love it. That's so cool. I love your stories. Now, you mentioned that maybe some business adventures didn't work out. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, did you start something and then realize that it was not going to make you money and jump out right away? Or did you have to go through some turbulent times to get to that next step?
Well, I'm kind of a stubborn, hard-headed pit bull personality. So my motto is Winston Churchill: never, ever, ever give up. And so when I started, it literally takes an act of God to get me not to do it anymore. So I can tell you one story that came after the publishing business. I got into alternative dispute resolution. And basically what I would do, because I was good at solving problems and I had some financial experience. And so what I would do is I would find businesses in the area that were being sued for non-payment. And I would negotiate an alternative resolution that kept them out of court and reduced the amount of money that they owed, and or set up some sort of a payment arrangement that would be acceptable to all the parties as an alternative to going to court. Well, that service, combined with what I was learning in marketing, helped me to grow that business to become the largest alternative dispute resolution business in my state. The problem with that is I'm not an attorney. And when all the attorneys in the state found out what I was doing, and I was very successful, by the way, at being able to find people or businesses who owed money and negotiate favorable terms for them, but it made everybody happy because it kept everybody out of court. Didn't make the attorneys happy because they weren't able to make all the fees that they wanted to make. Plus, I was not an attorney. So I hired a couple of attorneys to represent the legal aspects of the cases that I took on. But basically, to make a long story short, the Bar Association decided that I was practicing law without a license, and they sent me a cease and desist. And so in just a matter of 24 hours, I went from a very successful, profitable business that was helping people to totally out of business, and could not find any attorneys to represent me because none of them, of course, wanted to go against their own bar association. That's not good for their business. So I learned from that experience not to base a business model around things that I don't have control over. And that's one reason why I don't base my business on Google, on search engine results, on Facebook as a platform, because I don't have control over those things. I learned that in that first business that worked, and I did everything right, but external things come in, and sometimes you can be a victim of your own success. So I've learned from that experience and moved on, but it definitely was something that was upsetting and disappointing at the time, but I learned a lot from it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we learned so much from those pitfalls. And I wonder if you would also be willing to share, going back to that time when that was happening, how did you manage on a day-to-day basis? Not just it's easier for us to look back and in hindsight say, well, okay, this was a big lesson. Okay, this is, how I'm going to do things differently and stuff. But in the moment when we're going through this, and I think this will be of a lot of value to our listeners as well, to know that when you're in the midst of it, when you're just like in it and it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, it's there, but you just can't see it. Like, how did you deal with the emotions around that?
Well, I've always believed, just as a matter of philosophy and principle, that it's never what happens to you, it's how you choose to respond to it. I learned that from Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that you can be proactive. You don't have to wait for things to happen to you. You don't have to react to things that are happening or people that are coming against you, circumstances that come against you, business reversals, but be proactive. So as I really took a step back and was forced to take a step back and I just began to reevaluate. And I realized that I was more interested in marketing than I was in financial services. So I was really good at the financial services I was providing, but the success of the business had more to do with my ability to market that business. So that kind of confirmed for me that financial services isn't really where I want to be. I want to be in marketing. And so that set me on a several-year journey towards marketing and psychology and learning how to get better and better at doing that. So that's the first distinction I made is, maybe I'm better off in marketing anyway. I really enjoy that. The second distinction I made is, do I really want to work with clients who don't pay their bills?
Right.
Is that really the client base that I want to build my business around? And I decided, it's probably not a very stable business model. I'm working with people who, for whatever reason, some for very good reasons, haven't paid their debts. So is that what I want to base my business on? Is that the clientele that I want to work with? And yeah, I like helping people, but I decided, probably not a big future building a business around that type of client. So the answer to the question is, when stuff happens, you take a step back, you reevaluate, you make new distinctions, and then you create an action plan. So out of that failure, it led me to New York. It led me to being a marketing strategist and a copywriter for a digital media agency, which prepared the way for me to get into media, public relations, promotional things that I learned in the environment, and in the process prepared me to really go out and step out on my own and create my own business, doing what I enjoy doing and working with the people that I want to work with. So everything has a purpose, and it's just a question of recognizing it, not freaking out, but making those new distinctions and then moving forward.
Brilliant. I think that self-awareness piece is so key. And a lot of people, when they get into the muck, they forget about it, and they're spinning out externally and not taking that step back and looking internally about how this is actually supporting their vision and supporting their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, if you could go back in time, like 10 years, if time travel were an option, what would you tell yourself about the future?
I've had different people ask me different versions of that question. And the funny thing is, I always come up with something different every time. So I guess that means that I'm learning, and there's more things I wish I had told myself when I was younger. But I guess the advice I would give myself now is don't be afraid to be yourself. And this is really the light bulb moment that came for me not too long ago, when I finally realized, you know what? I want to be who I want to be. I want to have fun in the business that I create. And that's where the whole Rebelpreneur concept came from, that I want to help people build the business they need to live the life that they want. And for me to do that for other people, I've got to do it for myself. And that's what I've been doing with this whole idea that Michael Gerber of the E-Myth really taught me this when he explained the purpose of a business. He says the purpose of a business is to give you more life. The purpose of a business is to give you more life. But he says if your business is not specifically designed to give you more life, it will inevitably do the opposite. It will take the life you've got. And I didn't want that to be the case with me. So I have, for the last 2 or 3 years now, I've really set out on this personal mission to design the business I need that will give me the life that I want. And I've got an ideal that I'm shooting for. I'm not there yet, but I know what the goal is. I know what my ideal is. And every day I'm working towards that ideal. So the advice I would give myself if I could go back in time is don't wait so long to start that process. Figure out who you are and what you want sooner. And figure out who you are and what you want before you build your business so you can build your business to support who you are. And I know that with marketing, and maybe this is why it took me so long, because with marketing, it's all about the customer. It's all about the client. It's all about the target audience. It's all about getting out of yourself and putting yourself in their shoes, inserting yourself into their conversation, taking up the space in their mind and figuring out who they are. And that's very valid and very appropriate for marketing. But as a rebelpreneur, or solopreneur, entrepreneur, business owner, whatever you label yourself, I believe you've got to start with who you are, what you want. You got to get inside your head, get inside your heart, figure out what you want, and then design the business around that. Then, of course, you've got to figure out how to get your marketing to do what it needs to do so that your business can do what you need it to do, so your life can do what you want it to do. And so all of that is a neat process. I wish I had discovered that 20 years ago, but now that I know it, it's coming along very nicely. But I think the key to answering the question is don't be afraid to be yourself. In my case, I was trying to be the corporate guy, suit and tie guy, kind of guy that would get hired at a Fortune 500 company to be vice president of marketing. And finally, I realized that's not what I want. That's not going to make me happy. And I'm going to be happier doing my business my way and living the life that I want to live. And so it radically changed my whole approach to everything. It changed my marketing. It changed my messaging. It changed my visuals, my vibe, my voice, my value that I create and deliver. So that's my advice to everybody. And it's the advice that I'm following and trying to put into practice even as we speak on a daily basis.
I could not agree more. And what is it that you're doing on a daily basis in terms of routine? Do you have any daily practice that helps you move towards that goal?
I am all about daily practices. I'm all about routines. And I realized that a lot of very creative, very successful people that I interview, I ask them the same thing because I'm curious about their routines. And a lot of people will say, I don't have a routine. I just kind of go with the flow. I just go wherever the energy takes me. And that's valid.
Are you talking about me?
Well, maybe. It's like I remember somebody along those lines who just kind of went with the flow. No, it's all of us have different personalities. The key is to find where the flow is and then get into the flow. It's not trying to make the river bend the way you want it to bend. It's jumping into the river and going with the way the river flows. So for me, the river flows best when I have a routine. So my routine is I am an early riser. I will typically start the day 4 a.m., 5 a.m. is not unusual. I'm a spiritual person, so I always begin with prayer, and this really centers me and kind of gets my heart and my head into my high purpose. And then it's just a matter of what's the priority for today, and usually there's an intuition of where I need to be. It's either in writing or recording or creating products or writing books or whatever it is needs to be done. Usually there's some sort of an intuition about that, and I go with that. And I recognize after years and years of doing this that I am definitely a morning person. So I structure my day so that the first couple of hours are spent taking care of me and visiting with my wife. I usually cook breakfast for my wife every morning. She's quite spoiled by it now. And then the rest of the morning is dedicated to creative productivity. By that, I mean I don't schedule interviews. I don't schedule phone calls. I don't answer the phone. I don't do errands. I lock myself up in my library. And usually I'm going to write or record or do something creative. I'll stop for lunch, and then afternoon is devoted to client work, phone calls, interviews, errands, and at dinner time, I stop, have dinner, and I try to put everything out of my mind. And in the evening, it's time with my wife, reading, or whatever it is that I can do to relax and unwind and get ready for the next day. So that's how the day looks. If I try to get more detailed than that, usually it gets off track. But if I paint in those big blocks of time during the day and kind of organize things along those lines, it typically yields a very good result. So I'm sticking with that. And my productivity has definitely improved since I began ordering my day around that.
Very cool. And yeah, I think it's so important to take care of you first. Like they say about, in the plane, put your oxygen mask on before you put it on anyone else's.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they taught me something when I was in emergency medical technician class. And what they said, and I made a philosophical observation about this. They said when you're driving the ambulance on the way to a scene, you want to get there as fast as you can, but you want to get there safely. Because if you wreck the ambulance on the way to the scene, you can't help anybody else, and you just made everything worse.
Yes, so true. So in terms of self-care, you mentioned, you pray and you have this sort of time-blocked space where you have quality time with your wife, you have quality time for yourself, you have time for clients and creative endeavors. Is there any sort of specific self-care strategy that you employ to help you just be at top performance?
Well, prayer is probably the number one thing, believe it or not. I do like to go out for walks, and sometimes I'll combine the walking with the prayer or with deep thought. I love to be in the woods or by the lake or what have you, just to be alone with my thoughts. I've learned to take a notebook with me because usually that's where the best ideas come from. When I sit down to write or compose or create something, I don't want to waste time sitting there thinking about what should I write about. So I have an idea bank, and at any time I can go to the idea bank where I've got topics categorized by different genres or different things that I'm trying to do, and I know exactly what I'm going to write about. I find something that speaks to me, that's in the flow. I pull it out and I begin writing or recording or whatever it is that I'm going to do. I guess, well, I've told you about the weekday process. I also think it's very important that you have a weekend process. So I know with self-employed people, there's a tendency to work 7 days a week. And believe me, I fall into that category. I could definitely work 7 days a week, not because I'm a workaholic, but because I am so energized by all the different opportunities that are out there. So Monday through Friday, that's my work routine. On Saturday, I try to set that whole day aside for maintenance issues, repairs, and that would be like the things like stupid things like backing up your computer, backing up your mailing list, maintenance, cleaning up all the honeydew items that my wife gave me, like rake the yard or whatever. And then on Sunday, I try to just unplug and not do anything at all. So I find that rhythm of focused work followed by relaxation and recreation, disengagement, provides the right balance. So I look at it in a weekly cycle as well as a daily cycle. I don't know if that answered your question or not. I can't think of any personal routines I do other than structuring time to respect me and to respect everybody that I interact with. That's why I work by appointment. I see people on certain times. I set aside time to be with me, time to be with my wife, time to be with family and friends, time to be with clients, time to be with prospects, and then time not to be with anybody. Mm-hmm. So all of that is just, I guess, time management. For me, it's more about energy, managing your energy. And so that's something I'm still experimenting with.
That's phenomenal. Like, absolutely, it answered my question and then some. And I think that you provided so much. I think there's a lot of people who are going to be listening who are going to be like, whoa, I never really thought of that before.
Well, they'll probably think that's really kind of over the top, Ralph. I don't want to structure every single moment of the day. And, I would say just try it, because the price of disorganization is going to be a whole lot greater than the price of discipline.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, though, the word discipline sometimes conjures up for people like me, creative people, like a harsh, regimented structure. And right. What you do is not like that. And I do something very similar. My mornings are for me. I only take clients on certain days. I have all my interviewing on Tuesday generally. So I think that, don't get caught up in the words or what you have to do, but really take that in. If you aren't already designating time for specific things and you're feeling burnt out, it's not going to hurt. Like, you got nothing to lose, right? Mm-hmm. To say, for 1 week, I'm going to try this, and even just pick 3 days, yeah. or just pick a morning thing or whatever and try it out. You might love it.
One thing that worked for me, and this might help listeners as well, is that when I tried things like the Pomodoro technique, the tomato thing, mm-hmm. And you get to the point where you're watching the clock ticking and you're stopping and starting every 20 minutes or whatever. And that was too micromanaging of me. And what happens is, psychologically, you're setting yourself up for failure, because inevitably something's going to happen. You're not going to stick to that minute by minute schedule. So what I suggest is zoom out just a little bit and think more in terms of the whole day, the ideal day, and think about big blocks of time. Before breakfast, after lunch, after dinner, and just kind of fill in the big blocks. And it really doesn't matter if you spend 20 minutes or 45 minutes working on a particular task. What's important is that you have these blocks of time that you respect and you set borders around, so that when you are wherever you are, you're not being pulled away into another direction. Because until I learned to do that, I'd be lying in bed thinking about my business, or I'd be at my business thinking about lying in bed. I mean, it's a constant. You never are where you want to be, where you're supposed to be. But by setting up these borders and these blocks of time in your schedule, you know, hey, that's going to be handled. I have a place for that. I have a time for that. And it really helps you to get centered and focused on where you are. As a result, you'll be more productive in those blocks of time. And you won't be distracted thinking, when am I going to do this? When you're actually supposed to be relaxing and resting and interacting with family and friends. So that's my approach, and it's been working well for me so far.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that and everything today. We are at time. So I want to ask you, how can our listeners get more information from you? How do you want them to reach out and connect?
Well, the best way to connect with me is just to go to my website, ralphbrogden.com, or you can search on me on Facebook or Twitter, and you'll find the same thing, ralphbrogden.com.
Awesome. And of course, we'll have that in the show notes on bbrshow.com. And Ralph, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. And I had a lot of fun with you.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it as well, Nicole. And best wishes to you and to your podcast.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, make sure to subscribe on iTunes so that you don't miss another episode. And if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, it's super easy to do when you subscribe on iTunes. Also, we're on Stitcher. And of course, you can visit bbrshow.com for all of the episodes, show notes, and more. I would love to hear what you think about today's episode by leaving a review on iTunes, or also you can go to bbrshow.com, and on our show notes page, there is a comment section. Dear listeners, I do this show for you. So the more you let me know what you love, the more I can bring you that. Don't forget that the Business Building Rockstar Show releases every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So 3 times per week, you can listen in to what the journey towards rockstar status entrepreneurship is really like. Until next time, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I look forward to connecting again real soon.
And there you have it. If you enjoyed this episode of the Business Building Rockstars Show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss a thing. And visit bbrshow.com for all the show notes and links to resources discussed on today's show. Plus, lots more.